you get into that, I'm just going to throw this out real quick. So
Sure.
this recording is for purposes of just listening to the story. We have already started a launch into getting published in the medical journals. So probably why you didn't hear about this before is probably because the people who it may have happened to just, it just kind of, when a stroke happens to you, you're just kind of, left into this kind of like what if zone. And
You don't have to tell me.
yeah, I don't. So, and I think a lot of the practitioners just kind of, have just maybe they kind of think like maybe it's just me, or whatever it is. Well, with me, once my story went viral, I think it was a Jiu-Jitsu Times article. Then everybody started reaching out to me just like you did, and it just over time it just keeps snowballing. So now we're close to 100 cases documented. The disclosure that I have for this video, because there are going to be people watching this video, is why can't Chris? Why can't we just be quick and to the point here? These interviews are just general open conversations. They're recorded so that we can go back and reference them when we go deeper into the study, so that when the doctors and the medical students as well have questions, they can go into these YouTube videos and listen to the story of the patient. So it speeds up a lot of the time from the medical world. So that's my disclosure to the people who are watching this. But your name is, if you want to
Andrew.
Andrew.
Yes.
And where are you out of?
I'm actually out of Alabama.
Okay.
And I started jiu-jitsu. I actually went to UFC 3 right out of high school and was always interested. Now, being from Alabama as opposed to some of the major markets, we didn't have access to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. When you saw Royce Gracie do his thing, you thought that was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Where can I do that? If you didn't live in California, New York, you couldn't do it. And we had a guy come, and I probably started back in 2003, maybe, and did it for years and loved it. And I think anybody else that's watching this can attest to how much it changes you as a person. And that it's really more that it's about the part that's hard once it's taken from you is that it's your lifestyle that's gone.
Yeah.
And so not to bore you with too much, but did that for a while. Actually kind of was so focused on it that in Birmingham, and I hope nobody from the old gym is watching, but the level of instruction was not what you would see. It wasn't Renzo Gracie's gym. It wasn't, but I mean, it was a place to get together, have some access to it.
So this is from 2003 till about when? 08, something like that?
No, 2003 till about, I think maybe 2000 and I don't know, maybe 2009, 2010.
Yeah, so I mean those days, like, so I'm in Wisconsin, and I started 2008. So though that 2003 to 2008 here in Wisconsin, like, you were lucky to find there was like a handful of guys that were kind of all grappling, watching videos together.
That's the way. When I first started, that's what I bought. Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Basics.
Right. So that's really relevant to this whole conversation about strokes, because how many people do you think at that time in your state were? How many studios were there in that?
Oh, I would imagine there was one individual up about 45 minutes north of us.
Yeah.
That was one of those early guys. He had some relationship with Hickson, but this was a smaller town, a pretty small town. But for Birmingham, which is where I'm from, this was the first gym that existed, and even then, it was a small place, and people didn't know it. Like you said, the time that you may have gotten involved, people didn't know what Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was. Really, in all honesty, a few people did until the UFC TV show blasted it out there to everybody.
Yeah.
So it used to be cool if you were wearing a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu T-shirt going through the airport and you saw somebody that had one. You were like, oh my God, Rican Mikado. This is, and now everybody has tap out T-shirts or whatever.
Right.
But so I did that for a while. In all honesty, the reason I got out of it was I developed a relationship with Cobrina out of California. He, being Birmingham's close to Atlanta, he was at Alliance. He knew a friend of mine. I just kind of got to know him. He was just very kind to us. And so he invited me out to their gym whenever he opened his gym. Time gets away from me. That would have been maybe 2013. I don't know. Whenever he opened his gym. And in all honesty, the thing that I hate to admit this, that kind of got me out of that was not having great instruction in Birmingham, having a bunch of tough guys that, you could beat the average guy, going somewhere and seeing, okay, I've walked in the door of that gym every time it's open for 5 years. And I've learned more here with this guy in literally 4 or 5 days. It really ended up being very discouraging. And that, those nights of sacrifice and to be there, not going out with friends, it just kind of, and at my age, I kind of got out of it a little bit. And as I was out of it, I realized, you know what, I probably got out of it for about 2.5, 3 years maybe. And decided, I was like, man, I miss it so bad. It changes you as a person not to have that outlet. Got back in it. This episode, the stroke, was probably about 3 years ago. And had gotten back into it with a good gym here, and had been doing it for about.
So 3 years ago, you're getting back into it, which was about 2017 now, right? Does that sound right?
Yeah.
How many gyms are in the area now?
Oh, there's a lot of good gyms. We've got some gyms that have some UFC fighters. There's 2 or 3 gyms here now that have exploded. Listen, for my job, I travel all over the state of Alabama. And a lot of times I'm going through small towns. There are towns that have one stoplight that have a jiu-jitsu gym. I mean, it's spread out there. But there are 2 or 3 good gyms. The Gracie Baja, that's where I was going. Location here is run by a guy named Khalifa Oliveira. They are legit. He's legit. He was a judo champion in Birmingham before he came up in Birmingham. In Brazil, before he came to the United States. I actually met him through the old gym. But the level of instruction out there is available. Whereas when you're saying when we first got going, especially in the early 2000s, it didn't exist.
Right.
So I'd gotten back in there and had been there for probably about, I'm going to say maybe 2.5, 3 months. And it just kind of gotten got my wind back. Felt like I could take care of myself in there. And I'm still, while we want to talk, I still can't say exactly what happened that caused the dissection. I think but I don't know. So I went skiing with my brother. And during the ski trip, I had a fall that jarred my neck pretty hard. But I don't. Was that? Did you say something?
No, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So and then when we were flying back, I remember this episode where I was literally kind of nodding off on the airplane, and I had one of those things where your head goes forward at the same time the plane kind of hits an air pocket or something, and it just slammed my neck down. I remember coming up going, "Oh my God!" Telling my brother, I'm like, that actually really, really hurt. So we get back, and over the next, I'd say 11 days, I started having the symptoms that you will hear people talk about, where I had an extreme headache on this side. I had pain going up my neck. And I really kind of thought that I had torn and or pulled some sort of muscle. So I took, muscle relaxers, and ibuprofen, got massage, just didn't get any better. In the interim, the headaches were getting worse.
How many days after?
So
how many days after that plain whiplash was it?
I would say by the time I finally went and had somebody look at it, I'm going to say it was about day 11 or 12.
But what day do you remember having the first headache?
When I got back. When I got back after that thing, I woke up the next day and I noticed I had a little headache, but it was the pain in the neck that was running up. That was what I noticed more than anything. And so I went and saw my massage therapist, took muscle relaxers. That pain continued to progress, and the headaches continued to progress. And really, just not having any idea it might be as serious as it was. I just thought, man, this is really irritated. So it's something. By the time I got to about day 8 or 9, it was starting to give me migraine symptoms that were accompanied by some nausea. Like, this is relentless. This is hurting all the time. This may not be a headache. So literally on a Friday night, I went to an ER here in town and said, "Hey, look, I'm now on day 10, 11, whatever it was, of this extreme pain, and it's now to the point that I feel like somebody needs to look at it because I'm doing the things I know to do when I have these neck issues. Please look at it." Well, they looked me over. We don't see anything. They didn't, I guess, know to check for that, or did check for that.
Did they do any scans?
Yeah, they did something that was, and I wish I had been more prepared for that question. It was either looking for maybe some sort of disc issue in the neck, or I could get back with you. I don't remember what they looked for, but they did something.
I mean, if it's so, we're in the process of gathering everybody's data and getting any type of imaging for this study. Yeah. So I mean, it never hurt. Like, so I just went to my hospital for my 2-year, and I went to the desk and I just said to the lady, "This is the date that I was here, and this is the date that I left, and I need all of my medical reports and all of my imaging." It cost me nothing. She printed everything out right there, and then they emailed me a disc. And all this information is going to be going to a hospital. It's going to be stored behind a wall, and the doctors are going to be able to access this. So they're going to be able to pick up, like, "Oh, you made that. That was missed because they didn't do that scan." So
that's exactly what happened to me.
That's what happens. So that's what's happening. What we're seeing with most of these vertebral arteries dissections.
Well, somebody once told me that they're, first of all, a little bit rare, but that hospitals, doctors won't look at that unless you come in after a automobile accident, something that screams trauma. And so basically what happened to me then is I had the scans, came back, they shot me with something, who knows. And I've got most of that away. I can provide that for you at some point.
That's great.
And so I thought, well, I guess I must be all right. They looked at me, had no idea that was this. And so about another 3 days passed, and I called my just general practitioner doctor. And I said, "Listen, man, I got to come see you." I was like, I've got this pain that's running up my head. I've been to the ER. I am literally now, for about 4 or 5 days, the consistency of the pain made it to where you felt very nauseous. I don't know, if you felt that. And again, so I think what I've read,
mine was a carotid artery dissection. And I can tell you right now that we didn't have the same symptoms, but your symptoms are the same with all the vertebral artery symptoms. So we from the stories that I've heard, like, you guys all are in the same exact.
Well, what I wonder, and if the jiu-jitsu community is out there, is oftentimes do people have this timeline, or is this often something that happens immediately? Somebody gets put in a choke and then, oh no, because this, again, for me, this was a 12-day, 2-week event. And so it seems to me like some of the stories I've read, and I could be mistaken, that it happens to people almost immediately.
Yeah, it's like they go home and then the next day it gets progressively worse.
Okay, yeah.
I have not. I just got a call 2 weeks ago from somebody. We haven't done an interview yet, but he said that he was in practice. They were hard rolling, no gi. He was exhausted, going after chokes, attacking the neck, and he's like the next. Actually, right away that night he went home, and so right after that, he was in the bathroom, like where like things were spinning and stuff like that. And
It's kind of when you talk about that, I sometimes get amused when I'm talking to folks
yeah,
about
right. I do
that.
too.
You hear those public service announcements on the radio. If you think you're having a stroke, call. And I always think.
Yeah,
I mean, it's the most
yeah,
powerful thing that you could have ever
yeah.
experienced.
Well, I couldn't. I wouldn't even. I would when I was experiencing my stroke. Like if I was by myself. Like first of all, I'd be done. I'd be totally dead. But
I
like
think I may have been in bad shape too.
yeah, okay. So and people don't realize like think to call 911 I like I wouldn't even know like what the number 9 is. Like I would be able to forget. So it's like
That's exactly what it's so powerful.
yeah.
I say all that, when I went to the hospital the night of the stroke, and I'll tell you what that was. They didn't treat me for stroke. They just vertigo,
Yeah. Yeah.
So another 3 days passed. I go see my general practitioner. I'm talking about this pain on this right side of my head that's going into my. And I've never dealt with migraines. Had one or two in my life, but I'm like, this is debilitating. This is killing me. I'm like, and I'm now 12 days into thinking it's going to be better the next day. So he looked at it and said, well, if the hospital checked you out, this might be something. I think he said occipital neuralgia, which was some sort of inflammation of the optical nerve that can cause migraine type symptoms in pain in that portion of your head. I think he was basing that off the idea that the hospital has run scans.
Due diligence, yeah.
Yeah, so I say all that to say what it led me to being misdiagnosed was, okay, I've just got something that hurts. I got to get back in it.
Oh yeah.
So I went to the night it happened. Went to jiu-jitsu class, not having any idea. And yeah, I think the people that know read about it. You say if you know about it, you're supposed to be on blood thinners, not try not to
no
sneeze,
sex, nothing, no moving, no sex, no nothing.
Yeah, and so I was doing jiu-jitsu. And I can remember doing some warm ups with one of the guys and just kind of did practice some takedowns. And he would touch my neck, or even then, I was just like, this is hurting so bad. But I really thought, if it's just a nerve irritation, then I've just got to suck it up. It's just going to hurt. And then the moment it happened was literally I was on my back trying to put him in a triangle. And then, whoa, something isn't. It was the strangest, and it started to grow from there. And I knew immediately, like, I hate to say, I knew immediately this was something pretty serious. But I really, looking back on it, I guess if there's one thing for people that in jiu-jitsu, when they have this, to make sure that they look at and consider is the denial aspect. Looking back on it, I knew it was the experience was so powerful. Somewhere in the back of my head, I was thinking, is this a stroke? Is this an aneurysm? This is more than I'm incredibly exhausted. And so I really was kind of thinking, well, maybe did I do something with my inner ear or something? But by the time I kind of tapped in, I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. 40 seconds later, I think they were just thinking the old man is just getting real tired. And so I remember getting up to walk off the mats, and I stood up. When I stood up, I fell into the side of the wall with the mats. And then, of course, classes, there's still another 40, 50 people going on. I'm trying to walk off the mats as this thing is growing, and I almost can't even get off the mats. So by this point, I'm going to say I'm a minute and 30 seconds, 2 minutes in. There's some couches on the other side. I go sit on the couches, and as this thing starts growing, I'm going. I do remember being able to tell folks, "Hey guys, this is no joke." And they're doing the old, "Hey man, drink some Gatorade." I wanted to say, guys, I've rolled for thousands of hours. I know it being tired. This is not being tired. So it continued to get worse, and they were checking on me. And so some people were worried about a heart attack. So they were like, "Lay on the floor, elevate your feet." I don't know. You hear that? I don't know if that does anything. And I remember this when I remember.
Was the room Did you try it?
Yes. Well, what I did, I tried to get down to the floor, and I literally could not even hold myself on all fours.
Yeah.
So like that position, I could not even hold myself in that position at that point. I was falling over, and I do remember the sensation of feeling like I was being pulled to one side.
Sounds like you were having a stroke.
Yeah. I was. Spoiler alert. So this is I'm probably 4 or 5 minutes in at this point, and it starts to get so bad that when you can't even sit on all fours, it really feels like something was pulling you into the ground. I remember finally at one point, I'm usually one of these I'll tough it out. I remember telling somebody, "Call somebody." And the guy was like, "What, like an ambulance?" And I was like, "No, your girlfriend." Yes, the ambulance. What do you mean? So they called somebody, and between that point and by the time the paramedics got there, it was bad. So I started, of course, vomiting. I was so sick, and I can remember them walking me back to the bathroom. But this is a pretty big facility, walking me back to the bathroom, and just throwing up so hard that I felt like I was rupturing something. So you had the incredible dizziness. There's no way you could have, at that point, it's kind of like what you were saying earlier. If you had set a briefcase with $1 million in cash at the front door and said, "If you walk over there and grab that, it's yours." There's not a chance. There's not a chance. And so I'm glad you like that. But that really that was how powerful it was, how overwhelming it was.
Yeah.
And so I remember what's weird is that there's parts that I can't remember and there's parts that I can. I remember the EMTs coming and and them asking me, but I don't remember what happened there. The gentleman that called the paramedics told me a funny story later to try to add some sort of comic relief to such a horrible story. They said when I was in the bathroom, he told me, I said this, I don't remember saying it. But I guess they were asking me the same question over and over to either know that I could think of something or to see if my story was changing. But I think they were saying, what was your name? What's your symptoms? Where are you from? Or this. And at one point, I think they were asking me about symptoms because at one point he said, I looked at him and said, "Why am I diagnosing me? Didn't you go to school for this?" So, I was so frustrated that that's kind of what came out. It's just like, why? Can you not see? I have no idea what's going on. So get put into the ambulance. And by that point, you're throwing up so hard that I was hearing noises and I thought I was cracking my ribs. That's what I thought was happening. And they asked me where I wanted to go. Some of this I found out later. I don't remember this at the time. And I said, kind of the best hospital that at that point was about 25 minutes away. They drove about 70 yards, and I was like the closest place. It was by that point. I know something is very serious. The idea of a stroke kind of popped in my head a couple of times maybe, but I was kind of in denial. It was hard. I just didn't know. Honestly, that's the thing that I would point out to other people is when something happens, not to be scared of it. And I've read some of the posts, I don't remember if it was on your blogs or not, where people are saying, "Hey man, stop being a bitch." Just not to be scared of it, but just to be cognizant. If you're used to things being here and all of a sudden you feel something right there. Maybe nothing, but just be thinking about it. So went to the hospital, and really they were just treating me for vertigo. And I can remember, it's weird what you can remember and what you can't remember. I can remember at one point thinking, I was just looking back, like this is so in denial, thinking, how am I going to get home tonight? How am I going to get back to my car? And so they're literally laying me in this room, and I'm telling them, at some point finally, like, turn off the lights. It was killing me. I was in such bad shape. And I do remember being able to ask the nurse to get a phone, and I called and said, "These are the numbers. Dial this." Called my brother and said, "Hey man, I don't know. Something's going on at this hospital. Would you just keep your phone with you tonight? I'll call you when I'm released or whatever." Even though I knew I was in bad shape. But the fact that and they would have done a couple of scans, I don't remember what it was. I don't believe they ever checked for anything. Oh, I take that back. I think maybe they do check for something stroke related, but I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that some of that stuff in the not necrosis, but some of the stuff does not show immediately.
Yeah, if it's not done with a contrast.
Yeah.
So, for example, a CT scan's not going to pick up a dissection.
Okay.
Unless it has a CT scan with contrast or an MRA. Those they can pick. They can find the tear, but if they're not doing them, they're not going to be.
Okay. Well, I don't think they were. I think they were looking for. I think, to give them some credit, I think they looked maybe for not the dissection part,
but the
they
stroke.
Looked the stroke, and that maybe, and I'm doing some of this from recollection, that it maybe had not shown at the time. So anyway, I say all that to say they did treat me.
It's interesting that you say that as well, because a lot of these interviews that I'm doing is recently there's guys having these strokes, and the doctors are kind of like, don't really see why or how it's happening. Like these clots are just kind of showing up out of nowhere type thing. Like for example, there was somebody who recently passed away, and they said that there was a clot somewhere, but it didn't really sound like they really could figure out like where it was coming from. Like it was just kind of sitting there. I just think it's odd. Just from my conversations with people, where people are having strokes and they're not picking up. It's like they're not picking up the dissections when half the time when they're kind of looking for dissections. Like I don't know if you read the Josh Vera story, but he works in emergency medicine. He went to the hospital. They missed this dissection. He went back. Again, just like you, something's not right. Something's not right. Called his buddy. Something's not right. Get me in. I think I got it. And he's in. He's like, I think I got a dissection. And sure enough, they went in. They looked at it again. They're like, you're gonna be. They walked into the ER room. They were like, dude, you're gonna be pissed, bro. And he's like, why? He goes, you had a stroke from a dissection. They missed it. And the EMTs, like everybody's missing these things on these young people. I don't think it's just the BJJ community. I think it's the entire community, because I'm in some other stroke support groups on Facebook, and I can't speak on those stories in the support group just because of rules, but the amount of people that this stuff has happened to and the misdiagnosis is just like, it's like, whoa. So I mean, that's part of the reason we're doing the survey. It's not just jiu-jitsu practitioners, but I do believe that jiu-jitsu practitioners that are at a greater risk of having this happen, number one, out of pure ignorance, because just like you said, your training partners, there's no protocols in these gyms. It's not even spoken about. You know what I mean? Because people are in so denial that this can happen. So even if it's happening to people outside of the mats, fair enough. Like maybe it did in your case. Um, but then it's the protocol's got to be awareness so that a guy like you can recognize I can't go to practice. You can't tough it out. Oh, I got this pain up my neck. Life goes on. Time to go train.
Yeah.
Is not the mentality that we can't have that anymore.
Well, I felt like I had gone. You not being a medical professional myself, you feel like you've taken the steps you have to rely on those folks, trust those folks. That, of course, they missed it. So, I mean, obviously, had I had any idea that this was anything like that, I wouldn't have been there. But I felt like I've seen 2 doctors, I've had scans. Yeah. Birmingham is a very strong medical community, so you usually get very good care. You feel like, well, if I had that, so I mean,
everybody else would have done the exact same thing as you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like there's no disagreement with that. It's I think these dissections are happening more than we think, and I think people are being misdiagnosed and going home, and just like you, and maybe not having strokes, but like they're having pains and all kinds of issues and quick little episodes of vertigo or whatever, like whooshing in my ear. And they're going, and the doctors are saying, "No, you're good. Go home." They just might not be having. They're not having full blown strokes. The point that I'm trying to get people to understand is when you have those types of symptoms or signs, even if you are misdiagnosed, like you said, the numbers that I'm hearing, and like I said, we'll be publishing these reports. So it's not just hearsay on YouTube, but a lot of people are or a lot of these doctors and facilities, like they're missing the ball a lot, like so much.
Well, do you think that is because? Is that likely? You think because it's a kind of rare occurrence?
They think it's rare. They think it's
like so. When I finally got so in Birmingham, I reached out to a neurologist once it happened, and I can give you the story of how I figured it out if that's anything that you want. But those once it happened, everyone seemed to indicate to me that, like, and even reading online, that this is something that's just the reason it's often missed is because it is not a very common occurrence unless there's some sort of indication for sure. Now, if you say, in terms of what you're trying to bring to light, obviously for someone that's being hurt, if they're in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, hey, look, people have been tugging at this guy's neck with all their might. So, I mean, you may want to look at that.
Strangling is what we call it, not choking.
Strangling, yeah.
Because in the medical community, if they are looking in their reports for symptoms for choking, they're not going to find the information. But then if somebody comes into the ER and says that they've been strangled, they're going to be, then they'd start looking for different scans. So like for all you young healthy people that are coming in, they're just calling it vertigo, dehydration, and so forth and so on.
Unfortunately, that's how they treated me. And I remember thinking, I'm not one to make a big deal out of something. So I remember thinking, this is worse than vertigo. And one of the things that I do remember, I thought I laid in that bed for about 2 hours and 15 minutes. I'd been in that bed for almost 7.5 hours. And so I think, let's see, that happened at 7:30. Yeah, because I called my brother about 2 or 2:30. And so just that loss of time, it just shows you what kind of state you were under. And so when I left, I mean, anyone who's been through it knows just you're at a level of exhaustion that can't even be explained to someone else. that at that point I had no idea it was a stroke. It wasn't treated for it, and I hope that's something that you guys, or with your efforts, you can bring to light. They need to be looking for these things. But I do kind of feel like the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu community, as opposed to the population as a whole, is so small that the average doctor is like, what is it? Is that stuff I see on TV? They're not going to be thinking about. But I maybe one of the things is to, instead of having to reach out to all the practitioners, you may be doing this, and if you are, you may say this is completely obvious, but starting a program or an idea to continue to educate the instructors. So when this comes up, heaven forbid this is happening in somebody's gym, if they come in, that instructor can say, hey, look, EMT, we've seen this in other gyms. When he gets to the hospital, ask them to look for this.
Got it.
As an idea, because that way, at least when you walk in the door, EMT's rolling people in. They're saying, "Hey, this guy's from one of those fighting gyms, and they say, when this is happening, look for this. He's yours now." But I don't know if that could be something that could be done as a
absolutely.
Well, yeah,
it has to be. There has to be a continuing education. I think gym owners, just like there's a concussion protocol, there needs to be some type of stroke protocol, because of the fact that, we are playing with, strangulations. And not only that, it's also neck manipulations, and other things, that you can get off the scramble. You know what I mean? Stacking up people on the neck, cross face in the gi. Was the day that you were playing, were you gi or no gi?
We were no gi, and in all honesty, at the time that it happened, and as you know, and you've already said this, as I understand, that when you have the dissection, you have blood that pulls in between the layers, forms a clot.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of time before you knock that loose. That's where the trouble comes.
Or I think that some of those clots, I think that they, if you give them time, they can heal themselves and they don't shoot. I don't know for
maybe
a fact.
Maybe that's the case. So when you talk to other people that have, and I'll just speak to a vertebral dissection, they always indicated to me you have a pseudoaneurysm.
That sounds right. That sounds accurate.
And so there was a place where that happened, and they can, of course, do the CT scan and show that to you. And so, I'm kind of getting off subject here, but when it happened, there was not anything like immediate. We had been rolling. I, of course, was feeling the pain, but I just thought, man, I don't know what this is. It hurts. Like I said, at the time that it happened, I would have been on my back trying to apply a triangle choke. Got it right there, almost got it in, and just kind of was all of a sudden like, whoa, wait. And then kind of let it go. Of course, as soon as you let go, your buddies just jumped on you like that. But I was like, wait a minute. And from that point on, the story that I've already told.
Did they have a scan? Did clot hit your brain?
Yes, and I've got some. I will be glad to provide you some more information. Had I known, I would have gladly had this. But I pulled up. Well, I thought I did here. Let's see. I haven't saved them yet. But so these are some of the scans. I don't know how this will come through mobile device to mobile device. Are you able to see that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that was one of the scans. The white area, oh man, it's not going to show up well.
Yeah, pull it back a little bit. Right there.
Yeah, let's see if I can enlarge it. You'll see that one area right through there.
Yeah.
That would have been it. I'll be glad to forward some of these to you. That's a little darker picture that would allow folks to see where it was in the brain. And so,
so that's what I'm saying. Like, chances are if you didn't go to jiu-jitsu that day, you probably don't have it. I mean, I don't know for a fact, but you may have been able to prevent a stroke.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Right. If there had been any healing, I say that to say, initially what I was told, for anybody else out there that has that, there was a pseudoaneurysm, and I wish I had a picture of that. The stroke unit or neurological unit, whatever, UAB is one of these things. It's very good medical university here in Birmingham. It's one of those things. I don't know if other people run into this, but there's not a lot of them out there. So when you call up, they're like, "Yeah, we can see it. Great. When can you see me? 6 months. What good does that do?" And so I literally on a flyer, probably a few days. Okay, so I'll go back. So I actually got a phone call from my dad. This is probably that happened on a Thursday. I think that happened on a Thursday, and maybe got a phone call on a Sunday about something else. And I finally had to tell him. I was just like, "Dude, let me just tell you, I had something happen Thursday night. I don't know what's going on. I ended up going to the ER. This what?" And so, yeah, not to panic. We've got a small little fishing area on a private lake right outside of Birmingham. There's about 10 or 12 home sites there, but one of the home sites there is one of the top neurosurgeons in Birmingham. So he's like, "I'm going to give him a call and just see what he says." So he called. I'll leave the doctor's name out, but he called him and he said, "Okay, I want him to be at a place called Vestavia Imaging for MRI. I want him to be there Monday morning." And so went Monday morning because he kind of said something. I guess he was at this point. I still a stroke. Back in my head, I think I kind of knew something bad has happened because I could not keep my balance well. I was exhausted beyond anything that you can imagine. So went there, had the procedure done. Literally, they have an in-house, I guess that's a radiologist or whoever would have read it. And I was walking out, and they say, "Sir, would you mind coming back here?" I was like, "Yeah." As soon as they said that, they're like, "The radiologist would like to see. We saw something on your scan." As soon as they said that, I was like, "That's not good." So I went and saw him, and they were like, "Well, Mr. Mickle, we think that you've had a stroke." And I was like, "That's what it was. That's a stroke. That's what it was." And so they confirmed it, and
So
showed me.
those images that you just showed me came from their office.
This might have, I think those did. Now, for others that have been through this, they may or may not. Man, I got bounced around neurologist.
Bro, yeah.
You get bounced around so much that I don't remember who exactly what it was that took those. I think those were the initial scans.
Okay.
And so after that, they say, "Well, you need to go to the stroke unit at UAB," but it's one of those things that's back. You call them up and they're like, when can I come in? We get you in. Okay, great. When can I get in? 6 months. Thought. I really was like, I'm kind of surprised that's the case. And so I was sitting at work a few days later, obviously not being very productive.
Yeah.
And I decided to just on a whim, just call, like, I'm going to call the best places out there. So I called Mayo Clinic. I was like, I'm going to call the best places and just see if they will approve my case and get me in. I called Mayo Clinic. I don't remember how I got in touch with somebody. I said, "Hey, look, here's my situation. I live in Birmingham, Alabama. This is what my local hospital's telling me. I'm just seeing if there's anything that y'all can do or whatever." And she literally said, "I'm going to call you back in 3 minutes." I'm talking about 180 seconds later. They called back, and she said, "So you had a stroke from a vertebral dissection?" I said, "Yes." And this was on maybe the following maybe following Thursday. I get some of my dates confused. These other people are telling me 6 months. They said, "You had a stroke from vertebral dissection." "Yes, I did." She said, "Can you be here next Tuesday?" I was like, "Yes, ma'am, I can." And so I went down there, and the care you got there was great. And those were the ones that had looked at it. And I think I may actually have my timeline a little bit messed up there, because one thing that was positive coming out of that is when I went to Mayo, they said that the pseudoaneurysm part had healed. And I was initially told that would never heal. That's always going to be there. It may not have blood collecting in it, but that was always going to be there. They told me that had healed. So they were the ones. You do it like 6 month checkup, and I tell people, I don't know about your case or some other. I'm doing pretty well considering, but it's not like nothing ever happened. And what's funny is a lot of my friends, family, or what, some of them don't even believe they don't even believe you had a stroke,
Bro,
because half of your face isn't dropped and you're not eating your supper through a straw.
Listen, you don't have to tell me, because number one, family especially, like they're like they think like nothing happened.
Yeah.
And
my parents, they having the relation with the other doctor, who knew what it sounded like, it had they knew that's what happened.
Yeah.
And so, but your friends that see you, once you get out, maybe 2 months later, and go to a concert or something,
everything's great.
They don't realize that if you start to feel dizzy, to this very day, if I'm on the road traveling or something, I feel dizzy a little bit, I stop and get a baby aspirin. And if I'm riding with someone else, pull over. I'm going to go get an aspirin. Wow, and I've had friends be like, yeah, he had something like a stroke. I think the violent stroke that leaves somebody incapacitated is the only thing that people associate with a stroke. So, I'm thankful that I'm not any worse than I am, but it's not like nothing ever happened.
Yeah.
But let me ask you this. Yeah. This is kind of going down a different
fire away
avenue. What's that?
Fire away.
One of the things that they told me at Mayo Clinic that I've noticed is they said, listen, one of the goals, or the things that you will have to overcome the most. Yeah, I didn't even think about this. When you are recovering from a stroke, is not going to be really as much your sense of balance. It's going to be an emotional recovery.
Yeah, right.
Like you're going to suffer and I just thought, man, I will just power through that, whatever.
Yeah.
It's no joke. I mean, I found myself at times, and it almost kind of intersects with some of the stuff I wanted to ask you. So you've got your brain recalibrating, all the chemicals in the brain recalibrating. For folks out there, watch out for it. Now, when I say that, I don't mean that you find yourself in the corner sucking your thumb and thinking, oh, it's not me. It's very sneaky, but you will find that you're not exactly yourself. And that recovery, to me, has been every bit as challenging as anything that was physical. Because, the physical side, for the most part, I mean, again, it's not like nothing ever happened, but I would do pretty well. I can find myself occasionally, if I'm out fishing with a friend, I've leaned over to the side, I can find that my balance is a little bit off to that side. But for the most part, I do, things that are CrossFit type stuff, and so you're active.
That's important.
But it's not. But I say that so people will consider it. But also the hardest thing, and this is what made me end up reaching out to you to see why I'm so excited over the way that you've aggregated and are aggregating this information, is when jiu-jitsu is taken from you. If you're someone like myself, anybody else that might be watching this video, that is your mechanism for release. It is your mechanism for growth. There's not many things in this world that I think people do as a hobby that really is more of a lifestyle. Jiu-jitsu, people maybe who surf in Hawaii, there's a very few things with jiu-jitsu. Is I'm going to be healthy. I'm going to keep my flexibility, breathing. I'm not going to go out and drink. All these things that you do, and that's been very hard for me, because that's the reason I've reached out and I've always wanted to know, can I go back? I haven't been back because the doctors I don't know if they erred on the side of saying, hey, don't do this. But you do get this talk, don't ever go on a roller coaster. I just tell people I box. It's a lot easier than saying jiu-jitsu. You're talking to somebody who has no idea what it is, still conveys, hey, high intensity impact. And they're like, no more of that stuff.
It's mixed martial arts is really, I mean, the UFC was built off of jiu-jitsu. It was built to showcase jiu-jitsu, and they call it the gentle art, but there's nothing gentle about it. It is meant to capacitate and kill as fast as possible, and it was developed. We talk about how it was developed by the Gracies, but let's turn back the clock a little bit. The truth is, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was created by samurai warriors who needed to figure out how to kill their enemies as quickly as possible with hand-to-hand combat when they didn't have their swords. And then one of the samurais came to Brazil and
Sure.
taught
Hell
Carlos,
yeah. Yeah.
Carlos, the son of an entrepreneur, Helio's brother, Carlos. So then, yeah, they were all
Yeah.
taught together, and that's what Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is. That being the case, so to answer a couple of your questions, I think there's a number of people right now who are going to be excited to listen to your story because they're sitting in the same position as you, and I can guarantee you right now, everything that you're saying resonates to them. I am going to say that a lot of out of the practitioners, many have gone back, but many have gone back, but they haven't gone back. Like it's like going to swim in the shallow end after you got bit, sitting there, and then they kind of
Yeah.
come off and they kind of go swimming again, and they're really having a hard time, and they are struggling. Some people have said that they have issues with training partners, just like you said, not believe, like, hey, chalk it up to whatever, come back to training, it's a challenge. It's a big challenge, and my situation's different from a lot of people, and there's mine. It's like I almost am like married to this jiu-jitsu thing because I still do own two gyms. When it happened to me, I owned two gyms. I was a head coach at
Really.
Marquette. I had preached that this was the greatest thing in the world, Brazilian
Sure.
Jiu-Jitsu. So I was like,
God, that would have to be so. I mean, that's so difficult, man. I mean, it's just if people that don't jiu-jitsu being so unique in that regard, it's frustrating. People that don't know that, don't know what it provides for you.
right.
Forget forget the part that's your livelihood or
Right.
a part of your livelihood.
It's your community. It's
your community. It's nothing. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is what changed my life. I mean, I was still at the age where you're going out with your buddies drinking every night, and I knew about Jiu-Jitsu a long time back. As soon as I have the opportunities, like, oh, that's gone. This is what I want to focus on. This is what I want to do, and to see the difference between how you perform at your job, your general disposition, your mental acuity, all of those things when you're doing jiu-jitsu, you take some time off, you see how it affects you. You go back, you see how much better you're doing, and that's taken from you. Again, that with the already trying, I guess that's not the right word, is trying enough recovering from a stroke. You take away the thing that helps you cope and the thing that you love more than anything else.
That's what I'm saying.
You really feel confined. You feel like, and you can do CrossFit, you can do other things that are high activity. It doesn't even come close to matching.
It's not the same. I mean, I like I said, I made part of my recovery was continuing to coach, to learn how to talk again. Jiu-jitsu helped me,
So yours was as bad that it affected your speech.
Oh, I was completely paralyzed, completely couldn't talk, couldn't say a word. Didn't know my daughter's name, didn't know my phone number, couldn't speak. I mean, it was full paralysis on my whole right side, and could not speak a word. And it was me. My clot shot to my brain when my friend had me in a north-south choke, and I just wasn't tapping because I could breathe. And normally I would have been fine, but I had a clot on my neck from prior choking, and that clot shot to my brain, and that was a deep fucking choke. Like I said, I was still breathing, but I didn't know that a clot was there. I didn't know that could happen.
That's just it. Well, if you don't know that's there when something starts to happen to you, that you don't. That's the furthest thing from your mind. Hey, would you
that's
bear with me 1 second? I've got an alarm going off back.
yeah. Andrew, I think that's the biggest danger with the biggest danger with jiu-jitsu is if you don't know the symptoms, and I think 95 to 100% of the 99% of the community really doesn't know the symptoms, and that's part of the reason that we are all coming together to get this information out there. And stories like this are super important. As far as to answer some of your questions about training, I mean, from my perspective, you know, probably not the best idea for me to have gone back. You know, when you do step back, you know, everybody's different. You know, I've got a gentleman. I'll share you his interview. He's overseas. He was a vertebral. His name is Eric. He was a vertebral artery dissection, and he loves jujitsu and he loves the community. Everything you said, you know, when you hear him say it, he says it so eloquently. He's very well spoken. He's very educated guy. So when you hear him speak it, like it sounds like he's writing a book. I mean, it's just eloquent the way it describes what jiu-jitsu is and what it means to people.
Yeah.
But he, out of all of this, I mean, he kind of is the most logical guy because he's like, you know what though? I step back and I look at it and I evaluate and I mitigate my risk. And I say, you know what? It's not worth it to me. To me, it's not worth continuing to go back. And you know what? I think that's a fair. Everybody has that fair assessment. I don't honestly, Andrew. I don't think it's the smartest thing for me to be on the mat anymore. Okay,
that would lead me to the one question I find myself wanting to ask a vascular surgeon or somebody that might know: am I at any more risk than I was the first? You know,
I don't think so.
Is there anything different? Yeah. If so, I guess what I've wanted to say is: has anybody studied your you know your circulatory system to say, hey, there's an inherent weakness in your arteries? I've had the calcium scores. I had no, you know, but those are the questions I've always wondered. Is listen, I spent hundreds, thousands, whatever that amount of time on the mats and never got hurt. I don't even think this came from being on the mats.
I don't think so either.
But am I at any more risk right now than I was before that happened? Because they'll always tell you, hey, it happened once, you are at risk.
Yeah, but that's my guess is that the reason that they're saying that is because they're probably looking at strokes in old people, and the chances are if an old person has a stroke in 1 year, like they're most of the time they probably have another one, and it's probably has to do with their health. For the young,
have you seen anybody that has gone back? Because a lot of people say, well, just go back and slow roll, just go back and practice technique. That's not what jiu-jitsu is to me. My favorite part is locking up and going as hard as I can and having somebody go as hard as they can at me. So, and without that, it would not be the same. Do you know anybody that's gone through this and has successfully gone back over a long period of time without an issue?
Well, I mean, I've been 2 years. I mean, I'm still rolling with a bunch of savages with, you know what I mean? If you want to take my gym out of the equation, let's just say the guys at my gym are.
I mean, are you roll? Does that mean you roll full speed?
I mean, what? I mean, so the way that we like, I mean, technically, yeah. I mean, because my definition of full speed is like bump hands in a tournament and go to town like 100%. I never get to tournament exhaustion on the mats. I get to
But even 90% of it, nothing's going to be like tournament exhaustion.
right.
Because
But no, after my training sessions, absolutely, I train to to almost full exhaustion. I've been rolling now for 12 years straight. So even after my stroke, like I only took like maybe 5 months. I want to say 5 months off the mat before I started coming back and doing situational. So like my jujitsu is at a point where I can roll. Like maybe I can't roll with a bunch of savages over at Henzo Gracie's academy all night long, but like for the average Joe, I mean, who that I'm rolling with, like I can control myself, and I can protect my neck and have a good training session because of my skill set with jiu-jitsu. And like when I roll with the college kids, I'm 42. These kids are 19, 20, 21. They're at the gym all day, and they are trying to fucking kill me. And so I am rolling full blast with them. And I've like I said, I've developed a sensitivity to my neck. One of my training partners at my gym, Nova, said to me, he started laughing. He's a white belt, but he's like a wrestler guy. He's smart, and he said he's like I know. He goes I know how to how to get an advantage on you right away. I go, how? He goes the minute I started putting my hand in that neck, he goes, you can just see it. He goes, your everything in your game changes. It's just a different sense of desperation when somebody gets that lapel. And so
But have you had plenty of people applying full chokes to you since then?
no, I if I get anything close to where I feel like they're gripping on the lapel and they're getting closer, I don't even let it get that far anymore. I tap. And I have had a couple close calls where like I was, you know, like right when I got back was probably the worst because you still have the habit of trying to fight out of everything.
Yeah.
And I've just matured over the last 2 years where it's like if I'm
But what about situations where you have to, the dynamic of a roll? You never know which way it's going to go. You've got to roll over the net. You've got to.
Well, there you go. So that's the other thing. It's like the way that I'm playing my game. Like I'm not playing like loose Baron Bolo and like it's very. I play guard. I play spider guard. I try to stay on top. I try to play half guard. I don't try to find myself in a scramble position where my neck's exposed to neck cranks. I'm just conscious. I just have to be conscious of my neck. But the reason I'm so worried about it is because I got a stint in my neck. You know what I mean? So I don't know what that means from the stinting world, but I'm sure some people have said it's really strong. You'll never have an issue with it, but others have said if that thing gets damaged, you could have an issue. So I don't know, but I don't want to play around with it. Either way, when I'm in my when I'm practicing with my teammates and we're doing choke practices because Coach Mark wants to teach the new strangulation by Gordon Ryan because he's watching John Danaher choke videos, and I'll be the third partner, and I'm like, no, you're just guys aren't going to lock in on me, but I have had guys in practice where we do work together and they'll get the choke in, but they just don't squeeze to do any damage to the artery. Like you can put a choke on somebody and you don't have to rip it until their fucking brains pop out of their head.
Yeah,
and I think that's.
Well, I guess what I'm wondering is I don't know if I cannot put myself in those situations. Somebody trying as hard against me as I am against them. I almost don't feel like. And I understand some people say, "Well, I'll take."
You got to roll. You got to roll with the right people when you come back. I mean, it's that simple. I mean, you can't roll with they can't be like you. You just got to say like, listen, I had this stroke. This happened to me. This is it, and it's not just me. It's this guy, this guy. Hey, if you want to go talk to Chris Martin about it, hey, Andrew, I 2 weeks ago just got a email from a guy, and then I got an email from his wife, and his wife basically is like, "This is getting out of hand." Us two guys in the same gym in the last year had it happen to them. Okay,
Yeah.
and they're still oblivious to what's going on. So, but that's where guys like you can go back onto the mat and say, "Listen, coach, here's what's going on. If you can take my word for it, or go talk to Chris Martin. He's got a blog this long about other stories, and some coaches reach out to me and they're like, I want to hear more about this.
Yeah.
And that's a good, smart business decision for them, because if it does go down in their gym ever, you know, I feel sorry for that gym owner who sent the guy home to have a Gatorade, and he strokes out and he's paralyzed because the gym owner didn't do his due diligence from a safety
Sure.
protocol. There's gonna be repercussions there for that gym owner. So but you going back on the mat saying, "Hey, exists. I'm an advocate because it's happened to me." That being said, these are the signs. These are what people need to worry about and look for. That being said, if I come back to train at your gym, what are your classes like? Are they supervised? Does the coach watch? Is it supervised? Am I going to go with a bunch of spazzy, white belts and blue belts? Or is there a different type of, group of people who, can train with the understanding that, I tell people, I'm like, here, I had a stroke. It was a carotid artery dissection. I don't want to get too into it. We can talk about it later after the mat. But if we roll, just don't go. If you have like a fancy like kamikaze jumping out of the blue choke or something that you're really good at, like please just don't hit it on me. If you want to set up a little collar choke or an X choke, you know what I mean?
Well, let me ask you this: in order for you to try to execute at the best you can, and I guess I'll be asking this for myself. I feel like it'd be very hard or silly to ask somebody to take it easy on me in any way, considering, listen, I want you to challenge me as much.
You're not asking them to take it easy on you. You're asking them, like, listen, if you go for a choke, you're not going kamikaze, like snap and rip. Okay, that's they can control that. But at the same time, if they get that deep collar choke on you and they try to fight the grips and they just can't fight anymore, and you wrap up that choke, for example, a clock choke or loop choke or X choke, listen, that's your responsibility to tap. Don't put them in the same, let them attack and you tap out.
I guess from that point is what I would wonder is, as soon as it gets there, do I tap or do I practice fighting that?
Honestly, bro, you tell me, is it what is it worth to you? To me, if somebody's got my back and they've got a good grip on that collar of my gi, I'm probably gonna tap out.
Yeah.
If they kind of have my neck like this, like listen, I've tapped out to shit that was garbage, but
sure, yeah.
I don't care anymore because I'm at least I know that what maybe it's not fun, but I don't want to put myself in that position, and what, maybe someday jiu-jitsu is not going to be for me. Maybe one day I'm going to have to walk away from it. Right now I'm not. Like, dude, my body hurts. My back hurts. I have been doing a lot more yoga. I always told myself, like, if I transition out of jiu-jitsu, maybe I go to yoga. But you know what? The only thing I don't like about that is that yoga, you don't have that same community. You're not helping other yoga people grow, and you're not coaching.
There's nothing like the challenge that you put yourself into, whether it's competition or even nightly on the mats. I guess that's what I'm saying. Is for me, the thing that I enjoyed most about jiu-jitsu is the process of being challenged as much as I can be, pushing myself, I like, my first instructor, what I'm talking about, he used to jokingly tell everyone around, he's like, Andrew will die before he taps.
Yeah.
And that's the way I was.
Right.
So there were guys that were better technique than I am, but I would always usually outperform in a lot of the competitions and stuff. Being a blue belt that can win a purple belt division. Because when I got in there, I'm like, let me tell you something, man. You may be a better athlete, you may have better technique, but guess what? For the next 7 minutes, I'm gonna. So that's what I enjoy. That's the part I'm trying to figure out is. It may be those compromises are just what you have to do. It almost, for me, that's almost not jiu-jitsu, if that makes sense. Yeah. Kind of having to, like people say, I just want to roll technique. I'm like, that's great and all, but how do you know if you can do it?
Yeah.
That's that to me, that's like if you were a golfer and all you did was take perfect practice swings.
So I can tell you that the majority of the people who have gone back, they are rolling at like, for what you consider jiu-jitsu, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I 100% believe that you can. Now, the old Andrew, who is the tough guy on the mat who doesn't tap to anything, probably has to die at some point.
No, I'm not talking about, again, you check ego at the door. I'm fine to tap with something. What I'm saying is there really, I guess, just a danger in the unknown of going hard. Not necessarily when you get put into a position. If someone is got my gi locked up and they're sitting on top, they've got something. I'm not going to sit there and fight it like I would in a tournament. That's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah, 100%.
It's just the variance or the possibility that I guess the people that you've dealt with that have had these, how many of them have gone back successfully to doing things at a pretty vigorous level?
I mean, if you ask Josh right now, like Josh is that competitive black belt who was training for pans, training for this, training for that. And I can tell you right now, he is not that same guy. He is never going to go back. I don't think I'm like there's two things. Number one, Josh is still fresh off of his strokes within the last 2 years.
So this individual, how long ago was this?
2019 of January.
Really?
Yeah, so he's still fresh. I mean, so he's, but he knows he's not the same. 100%. It's not the same for him to go back. He does feel depression from that. 100%. And but again, it's everybody is different. Everybody has different circumstances in their life too. You know what I mean? Like some guys have got, the families might not want to, support it as much. I was divorced. I still am divorced when it happened. So, it didn't matter what my ex-wife told me. I wasn't going to listen to her anyway. You know what I mean? So,
well, Chris, it's funny you say that because I literally found myself thinking, this sounds morbid but serious, like, I don't know if it's foolish. Like, it's worth it almost to me that I was like, I want to write out essentially a living will, and if something happens, it happens.
Yeah,
I want to go back. And that may be foolish, but that's kind of how I feel. But I'm curious. The questions that I had for you were like, the people, or even the community in general, or the people that have been through this. Is there any indication? Do folks have an indication like there's a systemic weakness? If you've had one of these, this indicates a systemic weakness in your blood vessels, so you don't want to go back. Or is it once it happens, and from there it's no different than before?
That's the way that we're running it right now. And nobody's told us otherwise. Maybe our studies. Once we get this medical literature out for the peer-reviewed research, other physicians can look and say, you know what, these guys are all crazy, and then maybe something will come out. But right now, like the ones that are back, like everybody's going back at their own pace. Some guys have gone right back. Some guys have gone right back to competition. Some guys went right back to Some guys went right back.
What age guys?
So. There's
I'm 44.
Well, the last interview I've done, I haven't posted it yet, but he's in Poland, and his wasn't from a dissection, but he's had multiple strokes, and the name it's a foreign name, and I just did this interview, so you gotta forgive
Sure.
me, but I'll put it in the link because I gotta still upload it, but there was some audio issues, but he is a multi competitor guy. He's probably like early 40s. I mean, his ears are like hanging off.
Yeah,
Like,
as soon as you say that, you don't mess with that guy.
yeah, trust me, this guy's a badass, and he's had multiple strokes, and he was the guy that they found that he had the strokes, and the doctors are like, "You'll never go back to jiu-jitsu," and he's like, "Never again. Will you ever again tell me never again?" So he's like, fuck them," and he's on the mats, and there's even matches where he's like, "Yeah, this guy got on top of me, and right there he was kind of choking me out," and I like he has episodes where he can kind of feel like he's close to having a stroke, and he's just very hyper aware of his body, and he thinks he has it under control, but he's mentally made the commit, like he's like full competition. So he's in his 40s. Another dude, Aaron, his wasn't a carotid dissection either. So these guys who are competing, they're not they had strokes, but they're not from dissection. So, our arteries weaker? I don't think so, man. I think if I bet you if you went to get your scans done, they'd be like, yeah, it's normal. I think.
Well, I mean, again, that would be. This is why finding your information was so interesting to me. Uh, would you know through all the info what type scans exactly? Because I've gone for like the calcium scans. That some people will say, well, this is what they're looking for when they're looking at the condition of your blood vessels. Is there other kind of scans? Is there anything that you know of? Is there a procedure that you know of that someone can go in and say, this is how we look at your blood vessel, and we can tell you that you are completely healthy?
Andrew, I think that's the question of the day, and I think the venture capitalists and the people with the money, who want to make some money in the medical world, are going to figure out what this device or this test is, because they're going to be able to prevent a lot of strokes and keep healthcare costs down ultimately.
Well, certainly there's some sort of procedure. I know they can go in and do through your lab. I mean, certainly there's something that already exists, isn't there?
I mean, I've been asking the same questions, and everybody keeps telling me it's like CT scans and stuff like that. So
Really?
and the thing is, the problem with the CTs and the CT scans with contrast is that when you put contrast in people's body, that's radioactive. So I mean, just to do preventative radioactive scans on people, probably aren't doing it. I'm guessing the human body is resilient. The stories that I'm hearing, I think most people are healing up. I think that your symptoms, I think if this ever happened to you again, you would pretty much figure out that you may have had a dissection. You could probably diagnose it yourself. I think most Americans probably have no idea.
Yeah.
And like the research and the medical knowledge is not out there. It's obvious. It's very obvious. I didn't even know what a stroke the hell was when I had a stroke. I didn't. I heard the words. When I'm not running around being a jiu-jitsu guy, I do employee benefits and insurance, health insurance. That's what I do for a living. I sell health insurance to small businesses and
Do you do anything with like 401ks or
yeah,
stuff like that?
all that stuff, all
Yeah.
benefits, employee benefits. I've been doing that since 2001. Part of the jive we'd always throw out is the stroke. I'm throwing out words about stroke, selling policies for strokes, but I don't even know what a stroke is until it happened to me. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's prevention, it's awareness. I honestly, man, I really think you can go back on the mats. I think you just got to figure out that control of what you're comfortable with. Yeah, you're going to be able to roll again, and you're just going to have to figure out what your limitations are. Like, how far do you want to swim out in the water? You've already been bit by a shark once, but you love to surf. Do you quit surfing altogether? It's what the community does. It's like you might go out, you might surf a little wave, then you might go surf two big waves, and then you might go back to the little wave. and then you might take some time off and sit in the baby pool, and then you might go back to the bidwigs. You never know, but if you love it, and you can't find anything that's similar, I think it's maybe I'm foolish. I do think that jiu-jitsu practitioners have a greater risk of stroke from carotid artery dissection than other sports. I do believe that.
Oh, without question.
Yeah, but that's
I
not.
mean, it's the nature of what you're doing to the body. Certainly, that could happen in other impact sports, but it just jujitsu, submission wrestling,
Yep.